It's Monday, the 26th of March 2018. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. The big story tonight is all about the return of Miguna. That's right, he's back in the country, but he's still held up at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport over a re-entry visa controversy. The fiery politician has declined to obtain the visa, demanding to be let in as a Kenyan citizen rather than as a Canadian. The fiery lawyer, as you may remember, was deported to Canada on the 6th of February following his role in the January 30th controversial swearing-in of Raila Odinga as the people's president. On the big story tonight, we will look at the legal fault lines in Miguna's deportation and his return. Will he get his Kenyan passport back? And when? Where have the custodians of the law failed, if at all? Can Miguna go back to court and appeal? Our conversation will also look at the impact of Miguna's return on the ongoing changes in opposition politics. While in Canada, Miguna expressed his displeasure with the famous Odinga-Uhuru handshake, calling Raila Odinga a betrayer. Will Miguna be able to revive and sustain the course of resistance by himself? Does he remain relevant to Raila Odinga? Or should we expect another Miguna versus Odinga showdown, as was the case when Miguna published Peeling Back the Mask? Join the conversation on Twitter tonight. Tweet us at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara. The hashtag to use is The Big Story. My guest tonight, the Vice Chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, George Morara, and Ishmael Nyaribo, a legal and political analyst, are joining us on the show tonight to discuss this. Let's cross over now to where the drama is still unfolding on this big story. At the JKIA, our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, joining us live from there. Sophia Wanuna, good evening. It is good to see you. This story is still unfolding. So what is happening at this moment?
Good evening, Yvonne. Yes, the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport Terminal E, international arrivals, and it is some rooms behind me here that Miguna continues to be holed up. It has been over 5.5 hours of a standoff since he landed at 2:30 p.m. earlier this afternoon. What was interesting is that flight was not in the manifest. The schedule usually outlines the flights that are coming in, what time, if there are delays as well. Those are indicated on the schedule that are all over the airport, and therefore you can track that. So earlier on, there were fears that he may not be coming back, but at 2:30, once he landed, we had confirmation he had in fact arrived. But upon his arrival with, of course, a Canadian visa, then came the issue of entering into the country, and that has been the issue of concern because the authorities here, the immigration officials, insisting that he gets what they're talking about as a courtesy visa, which lasts about 6 months, as his situation and status is revised, Yvonne. However, Miguna has been adamant alongside his lawyers. We understand with him inside. In fact, there's a video we've just received from the council there having some tea and mandazi. You have Senior Counsel James Orengo. You have the likes of Nelson Havi, Haminwar as well, and others, as well as a Kenya National Commission on Human Rights official who is supposed to be supervising this process, ensuring that court orders are adhered to. So that what we are witnessing here tonight, Yvonne, is another yet incident, an example of the disregard of court orders, because on the 26th of February, the High Court gave out 6 particular orders, and one of those orders that was suspending the directions and finding of the CS Interior, that's Dr. Matiang'i, that had negated the citizenship of Miguna, said that when he sought to have it back, it was done unprocedurally, and therefore he had ceased to be a Kenyan citizen and only held a Canadian citizenship. So in that regard, the narrative from government was he was deported as he was not a Kenyan citizen. However, that was suspended pending the hearing and determination of the petition. The second order that Judge Muita gave in that particular ruling was directing and also suspending the orders of the Directorate of Immigration that had taken away Miguna's passport, in fact perforated it, which is in essence distraction. They had given a case for why they'd done that, but the judge finding they should restore his passport, again pending hearing and determination of the matter. Also in this particular ruling, Judge Mwita also found that the national resistance movement, for which Miguna is a leader and had been listed and found by the Interior CS to be a criminal organization, that stood as well suspended until the matter was heard and determined. The fourth order we saw there, Yvonne, and why we're seeing a Kenneth CR official here tonight, was that Kenneth CR was to oversee this process, to ensure that kind of flow and smooth transition and entry of Miguna up until these matters are conversed in the court of laws is happening. That is yet to take place. But also very critical, an order given to the Directorate of Immigration to facilitate the entry of Miguna, to return or reinstate his documentation, citizenship, until the matters are heard or conversed. And failure to that, the judge went on to say, Yvonne, that he then be allowed to come in with his Canadian passport up until, again, these matters are conversed. So tonight, the government finding itself at odds with the court orders, because you remember at the time Miguna was forcefully ejected, is what it has been described with. The government maintains its deportation. Exile is how some of the lawyers want to look at it. The government, after the High Court ruling dictating or ordering that he be brought back for these matters to be heard and determined, had appealed. And this matter came before a 3-judge bench, and the government was seeking for the status they had found of Miguna be maintained, that in fact he was not a Kenyan citizen and that they were right to take away his passport. However, this 3-judge bench court of appeal finding that the government erred and that, in fact, Miguna should be allowed back into the country. So 5.5 hours and counting in there. They're saying they are staying put. There is no way they are going to sit ground and even surrender that Canadian passport, as we understand the immigration officials were saying. What we're hearing, to avoid a scenario where they may forcefully take it from him, is that it has since been handed over to a member of the NRM. It has managed to exit with it from the premises. So as he stands right now, it would be a difficult situation to send him back to Canada without his proper documentation, and also the government maintaining and holding its ground that he cannot come in unless with that courtesy visa. Remember that the catch with this courtesy visa, Yvonne, is if in fact he was to agree to do so, it would prohibit him from engaging in any political discourse in Kenya. So it is quite limiting, sort of like a tourist visa. So you can find the discomfort a very vocal Miguna would have with this kind of an arrangement, because already, as you mentioned there, Yvonne, Miguna has denounced and expressed his displeasure with that famous handshake now between President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, describing it as betrayal of the people of Kenya. He went on to talk about it as a betrayal of the hundreds of Kenyans who lost their lives during that electioneering period through the protests that were witnessed, the welcoming back of Raila Odinga from the US at the time, and other events that he did highlight following that handshake. So it will be interesting to see first, Yvonne, how this plays out. Will he be allowed into the country? If he does, under what circumstances, or what other play is the government likely to take tonight? But number two, once he's in here, what happens next? Because remember, the People's Assembly, that has been halted following the handshake. So you'd imagine the controversial and antagonistic nature of the national resistance movement would not be one that will be taken well in light of the latest development. And you remember Raila Odinga, whilst the proceedings were going on in court before he was forcefully ejected, he was there expressing support and solidarity. Tonight, Raila Odinga is not here with his NRM soldiers. So will this as a unit continue to stand beyond today in light of the new political realignment and the shifting we're witnessing? Definitely events will continue to follow, but our stay here will continue, Yvonne, as we await to see how it all plays out.
Yes, and it's interesting that you pointed out the absence of certain notable figures, which is something a lot of people are remarking on, even on social media, about, where is Raila Odinga? This might be his moment to sort of use that handshake and the newfound friendship with President Uhuru Kenyatta to smooth this process out. But who else is there besides his legal team? Is his family present? We understand that prior to this, his lawyers had requested the government to allow his family and his supporters to welcome him upon his return. Do you see any of them there?
Yes, where we are right now, one of the cafeterias just next to this, quite a number of family members will be speaking to them. At this time, they were not willing to speak, still saying they're trying to engage with as many government officials and more so officials in the National Super Alliance, top leadership, to be able to come in and intervene, saying that this handshake and its implication should be felt up to this particular instance, that a man who stood by Raila Odinga, a man who administered that oath for Raila Odinga to be missing in action in this moment of need, that he wants to come back to the country where he was born, is rather wanting. So expressing their displeasure with the development so far, with the lack of that high profile, if you like, kind of presence and even intervention and pronouncements from these leaders in this particular instance. But in there, only the legal counsel and the KNCR official are with Miguna. Family and friends, supporters of NRM, they have been here all afternoon, and in fact as well, just expressing their displeasure as well with how events and matters have been handled by the authorities. So, and as far as that is concerned, it's a busy affair here at the international arrivals. I remember when I was coming in, one of the tourists was asking what's going on, why there are so many people here. It looks like a political rally, but explaining to them what is happening. So if he does in fact come out, it will be quite a reception for him if they do stay on, and if in fact he is released from inside.
Indeed, Sophia, it looks like it's going to be a long night at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, we trust that you will stay with the story until we see perhaps some new developments in that respect. Sophia Wanuna, our lead reporter here on The Big Story, live from the JKIA. And just those pictures that were running a short while ago is what Sophia Wanuna was alluding to, that amateur footage showing Miguna at the airport with his legal counsel enjoying a snack. It looks like it's going to be a long night for them. So that is the latest footage of Miguna at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where he says he will remain put until he is allowed to come into the country as a Kenyan citizen. So we will speak to my guests in a moment, one of whom has been at the JKIA all afternoon, and he will give us his perspective. That's from the KNCHR, and they were overseeing this process to ensure that his rights are upheld throughout his return to the country. But let's just jog your memory, because this has been a story that has been unfolding since the month of February, and there have been twists and turns. So let's take you down memory lane just very briefly so that we can bring you up to date with where we are today. So this all started, of course, with Miguna's arrest on the 2nd of February. The DCI, George Kinoti, confirmed his arrest for administering an illegal oath and being a member of a banned organization. The High Court judge, under a certificate of urgency, directed he be released on anticipatory bail of 50,000. He was charged with 3 counts in a Kajiado court. On the 5th of February, the court heard that Miguna had been kept incommunicado throughout that time. His lawyers expressed fears over his safety and his health, and the court ordered the Inspector General and the DCI to appear in person before them to show cause for why they had disobeyed the court orders. The police, of course, failed to present Miguna before the High Court. Now, let's move to the 6th of February, when the Kajiado Magistrate Court declined to take plea and, in fact, directed this matter to the High Court in Nairobi. He was then deported to Canada despite a court injunction against the same. You'll remember he was then mysteriously taken to the airport airside and was then put aboard KLM flight number KL360 against his will. The deportation pursuant to a declaration that was issued by the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, pursuant to sections 43 and 33 of the Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Act. Now, on the 10th of February, the government, through the DPP, the Inspector General, and the DCI, asked the Court of Appeal to set aside a High Court ruling. Then we've heard, as Sophia mentioned, quite in her detailed update at the start of this show, that the High Court, or rather the 3-judge bench, found his deportation illegal. Now, let's come to the 26th of February, much later on in the month. Justice Chacha Mwita ordered his return to Kenya, suspended the state's declaration that he was a prohibited immigrant. The High Court judge suspended the cancellation of his passport by the immigration boss. That's Major Retired Gordon Kihalangwa. Now, on the 12th of March, then, the Court of Appeal, as we said, ruled against the government's appeal to stop his return. So this is just what has been happening in the country to date, and this is prior to his return. I want you to now take a look at his responses. That is of Miguna at the time. Now, he said his deportation was a violation of his constitutional rights. That is the quote there. He said he has never, ever renounced his citizenship, will never do so, and had never even contemplated it. He claimed that the CS for Interior violated the law and that his fundamental rights were not upheld and they were violated. And he also went on to claim that 34 hooded criminals raided his home, whisked him away, failed to identify themselves and the reasons for their raid, and vowed to challenge his detention and deportation through his advocates and have what he called the perpetrators brought to book. So that has been his response. We will get to what he's been saying about the handshake in just a moment, because that's another facet of this discussion. Let's first get into the legality of the whole development that we have seen right now. My guests tonight, the Vice Chair of the Kenya National Commission Human Rights, George Morara, and Ishmael Nyaribo, who's a legal and political analyst. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for making the time to be with us. I'd like to start with you, George. You've been at JKIA all afternoon to basically oversee this process. What have been your observations as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights with respect to his rights and how this process has unfolded?
Thank you so much, Yvonne, for having me on studio. Indeed, as you rightly say, we have been, not only myself, but a whole team. The chair of the commission, Madam Kaguri Mbogori, got to the airport quite early at about 10. A colleague who has been monitoring this process very closely, Commander Musheke, has been there with a whole host of staff from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. And our brief was very clear as Sophia gave that very elaborate account of the order. We were there under order number 4, where we were required to monitor the return of Miguna to the country, and to really see that the return was in compliance with the court order, and that the return was also in compliance with the relevant human rights instruments in the country. But Yvonne, let me just say this upfront. I don't think we should have been where we are now if this process was handled differently. I think in the spirit of the handshake, really, what Major Gordon Kihalangwa should have done is to really comply with the court orders in total, because it is very clear from the court orders that the directives suspending Miguna's Kenyan passport were rescinded. It's very clear that the directives are requiring him to be, or listing Miguna as a member of NRM. All those directives were really lifted. So what I would have expected Major General retired Gordon Kihalangwa to do is, in the spirit of the handshake, to really facilitate this process, even to be there in person, tell Miguna, karibu nyumbani, here is your passport, and then because Miguna has still a matter pending in court, then we take it from there. But what we've seen so far, Yvonne, is a standoff, and this is completely unnecessary. I don't think we should have gotten to where we are now.
So George, is it your statement tonight that the Inspector General and the Director of Immigration have refused to obey and comply with the court order that was issued by Justice Chacha Mwita?
Well, largely so, because if you look at the orders, really, there's no basis of denying Miguna entry into this country as a Kenyan citizen, because the court was very clear. Where there were directives that had been given that is not a Kenyan citizen, the court said, no, let's put that in abeyance until we determine the matters that have been brought against him in court. Where the Minister for Interior and Coordination of National Government, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, had said that Miguna belongs to an illegal entity called NRM, that was also put aside until the matter was determined. So really, clearly, I think what the immigration is doing is really relying on a very small part, a very narrow interpretation of the orders. Because if you look at order number 4, where we come in, the immigration department was required to issue travel documents to Miguna to facilitate him to come. So logically, if he had already been, the status quo to remain that he's a Kenyan citizen, therefore logically it follows that even if the immigration department had perforated his passport, they were required to facilitate his travel back to Kenya by giving him relevant documents, including a new passport.
And they had enough time to do
they had 1 month
passport,
to do that
because this was done last month.
Yeah, they had 1 month to do that.
Yeah.
They did not do that. But I think what they're relying on now is that very small part of that order that says in default. That is where they don't give him the Kenyan passport, then Miguna will be at liberty to come back using the Canadian passport.
All right.
But Yvonne, if that was the approach we took in this country, we'll be in so much trouble. Let's even assume that Miguna was not a Kenyan citizen.
Yeah.
How many non-Kenyan citizens have we actually taken to our courts of law? Are we saying that if we found a non-Kenyan here who has broken the law, then we deport them? We've seen non-Kenyans being brought in our courts of law.
George, hold that thought, because speaking of whether he should be allowed in or not, let me get Ishmael Nyaribo in on this. Ishmael, Mwenda Njoka, who's the spokesman in the Ministry of Interior, is tweeting about an hour ago. This is what he says. The government of Kenya has not denied Miguna entry into the country. Upon arrival at JKIA, he was asked to present the passport he traveled in. He declined. It is a legal requirement and an IATA regulation for travelers to show the documents they traveled in at the point of entry. Your response to this?
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. I think there is a very serious show of misunderstanding the law and open disregard to government procedures by government officials themselves. You see here we have a case whereby the High Court of Kenya, the Court of Appeal, have allowed Miguna to come back to Nairobi, to Kenya, to his country. Even if Miguna were to refuse to hand over the travel document, really the government officials would actually usher in Miguna on one simple basis, that the High Court of Kenya has actually directed that he comes back in whichever way, whether he hands in his travel document or not. Secondly, you see a situation whereby junior officers, by junior I mean officers under the presidency and definitely lower than the presidency in Kenya, are not following suit, are not following what their master is doing. So they are really operating from certain cartelism type of leadership. They probably are calling each other between immigration, between the police force, and deciding that we will not allow this gentleman. While actually the head of state, together with the leader of opposition, have agreed that let us bury the hatchet and ensure that we can have our people now work peacefully. So I think that it is good to follow procedures. What Major Kihalangwa is saying, that under international law, you should present that document. That is true. And if it will require an hour or two to process a person entering Kenya, especially under the order of the High Court, that is fair enough. But why would those procedures require 5 hours keeping somebody at the airport? So I feel that government officials actually are letting down both the presidency, the opposition, the kind of peace that is being built. The people working against that are those officers who are in government, who are managing our systems.
Okay, we want to take a short break now. When we come back, we will talk about the political environment into which Miguna is returning, and that is the fate of the national resistance movement. Here's one tweet from Reagan Hassan. It says, NRM is not dead. As a soldier in the generals movement, we have promised to stay the full course of justice, undeterred and more focused. And unless we start seeing that justice, we will keep fighting to the end. Keep your comments coming in as we now take a look at the human rights that may have been violated in this process. How long does this go on? And indeed, what happens should Miguna be allowed into the country, officially from the airport? We'll be right back. This is The Big Story.
This is KTN News.
We interrupt normal programming to bring you breaking news. Hey, you! Yes, you! t-shirt yellow. Yes, you!
Top up and win 50 cars in 50 days with Telkom. The more you top up,
the more your entries are,
and the more chances you have of driving away with a brand new Toyota Belta.
Start topping up now. Join Telkom today for your chance to win in the Top Up and Win.
Mom, hey, Gary Nyango.
50 cars in 50 days promotion. See press and posters for details.
Excuse me. Nani atani scratch ya?
Telkom, moving with you.
What if all of us came together to do something incredible? An anthem made from all of us. Here's to the us in every tasker.
Here's an invitation to the whole wide world. From your brother to your sister to your best friend's girl. Don't bring that bad day with ya. Leave it at the door. If you got money in your pocket, it don't mean nothing if you ain't where it is. If you ain't where it is.
All the great visionary leaders stood up to be counted, and more will continue to rise. This is why CIM Kenya is inviting you for the 2018 First Quarter Power Breakfast, where we will share and discuss legacy leadership passing on the baton. Wednesday, 28th March 2018 at Intercontinental Hotel, Nairobi, from 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Speakers include Martin Oduoro Tieno, Andrew Mutuma, and Catherine Musakali. For more information, email events@cim.co.ke or call 0713119123.
Viongozi wa nchi yetu, wa upinzani na walio serikalini walionyesha mkono ya kusalamiana na kusema kujenga amani katika Kenya. Tunaunga mkono tukiwa kanisa, maana tumekuwa tukiitisha aina hiyo ya mazungumzo. Watu wakae chini bila ya kufurugana kule nyanjani na barabarani, kwa sababu suluhu itapatikana wakati wa watu wamekaa chini na kuulizana ni nini ambayo tumekosania na waweze kupatana. Kwa hivyo sasa vile wametuonyesha wiki chache zilizopita, basi idhirike wazi ya kwamba watatokezea na sisi tukiwa kanisani tuunganishe wa Kenya, maana hatuna nchi mbili, ni hii Kenya moja na wote ni wa Kenya pamoja.
This is KTN News.
Welcome back to the big story, the focus being on Miguna's return, but being held up at the airport. The standoff continues at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport over the specific circumstances of his entry into the country. He wants to come back in as a Kenyan. The JKIA says they want to probably give him a tourist visa, which will restrict quite a bit of his activities in the country. Still with me, George Marara, who's the Vice Chair of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, Ishmael Nyaribo, who is a legal analyst. George, what happens now? Going forward, Sophia tells us from the JKIA that he has possibly given his passport to somebody else just to prevent it being taken from him forcefully. So what happens now if he spends the night at the airport tomorrow? Is it a return to court?
Well, maybe if he spends if the status quo remains that there's this standoff at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, I don't see any other recourse other than the lawyers really going back to court to seek further interpretation on what the courts meant by that, the order that they gave. But it's actually very unfortunate that we have to go down that path, because for me, really, the rule of law is what the Constitution tells us the laws are. It is what the various statutes tell us the law is. And the institutions or the people who really interpret or say the parameters for what the rule of law is are our courts of law and the judiciary generally. And on this matter, the judiciary, both at the High Court and the Court of Appeal, have been very clear that Miguna needs to come back. We need to go back to the original position before he was arrested and deported, and that has not been really followed. So, as it were, it's very unfortunate. Like my colleague, my very good brother there, Nyaribo, has said, we would expect the government officials, the ones in the top echelons, to be leading Kenyans in really telling us when it comes to the rule of law, when the court gives you orders and directions, you follow those, and you don't then start opening up other avenues to really disobey court orders. So what's happening is a really flagrant disregard of those court orders. And as you say, Yvonne, if nothing happens, if this is not resolved, if the impasse is not resolved, I don't see the lawyers having any other recourse but going back to court to really seek further directions on this matter.
But then, let me ask this, because there was also the court that required the government to facilitate his return to the country. You are overseeing this process. Can you confirm whether that is indeed the case? Did the government pay for his return, his flight back?
We haven't actually gotten that information. My sense is we've been engaging with the Immigration Department, and there wasn't any elaborate measures in place, including paying for his air ticket. And I say this because at some point, when he was being asked to produce his Canadian passport, there was the requirement that he was going to pay the visa fee, the $50 or so. And that is the one that then the Immigration Department was negotiating, that he can be given what they're calling the courtesy visa. So really upfront, I don't think this process of facilitating his return has gone in line with what the court ordered the Immigration Department to do. And you're right, Yvonne, we got the information that one of the supporters of NRM, as you rightly put it, has left the airport with Miguna's Canadian passport. But again, if the Immigration Department wanted to deport him back to Canada, they would process documents for his deportation. So we are saying the same way they would actually do that processing of the documents for his deportation, let them use that avenue to process the documents for his re-entry, as opposed to taking the longer route or the most difficult route of processing his documents for deportation. Because at this point in time, even if they wanted to take him back to Canada, they must process some form of travel documents. And that is exactly what the court was asking them to do.
But we did see that process happening before, and even the court itself ruled that the manner in which he was removed from the country, because deportation is then itself a controversial term as to whether, you know, that term applies in the case of Miguna. But so what will you be saying in court, should it come to that? Because you were required to oversee this process. What will be your statement?
Well, so far, because we've written letters to the Immigration Department, we've met with them, asking them to give us a status of the preparations for Miguna's return. And what we'll be filing in court is really what we've seen. And like I told you, Yvonne, we thought these court orders were very explicit and very straightforward. They required the status quo to be returned to where it was before Miguna was deported out of this country. That has not happened. And indeed, that is what we'll be telling the courts, that so far we haven't seen any active commitment from the Immigration Department to really facilitate Miguna's return to Kenya. On the contrary, they are relying on what you would call some sunset clause, like the last part of order number 4, to say that he's free to come to this country using an alternative passport. He's at liberty to do that. But I think the purpose of the law and the Constitution is very clear on this, is when we're interpreting our laws, we should interpret them in a manner that most facilitates the enjoyment of rights as required in our Bill of Rights, specifically under Article 19, and that has not happened so far.
All right. I want us to pivot a little bit to the political environment that Miguna is returning to, Ishmael. But even before that, let's just put up his tweets in reaction to that handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and NASA leader Raila Odinga. He, as is usual Miguna fashion, did not mince his words. If we can have that up on screen for you to just take a look at his rather stinging statement, feeling a sense of betrayal. Let me just read that for you. That tweet that was posted on the 10th of March, I believe, where he said, Mr. Raila Odinga, you have betrayed Kenyans who fought and died for you. And of course, talking about the rule of law and the cause of electoral justice that cannot now be fought even under the circumstances of that. Then there was the other one we talked about. You have betrayed your comrades in the struggle for social justice. Retire. So, Ishmael, he comes back into the country. The handshake has happened. There have been reports even that Raila has said regarding the 2017 election, that's in the past, we need to move on. This was a big deal when it came to the NASA resistance movement, the fight for electoral justice. Where does Miguna fit in the current circumstances in the country?
Yvonne, very straightforward. Miguna has created his own political environment, and that is the harsh one, the harsh, hostile political environment for now. But just so that I don't appear to be going back, Yvonne, we want the government officials involved in blocking Miguna tomorrow in the High Court of Kenya to be actually chastised, to be punished by the High Court of Kenya. Officials are taking the High Court for granted for too long, and also the judges are a bit too soft or too lenient to persons who are actually in contempt of court order. So
I want to, because I want us to end with that, because I will want us to discuss, Ishmael, what happens.
Yes.
But let's just talk about the political environment first.
What you're asking me, Yvonne, basically, it's a contradictory of events. Here, there is the past and the present. If Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta did not shake hands, for example, of course, Miguna could be coming back to a different atmosphere, a different environment, a different political field. But now, the head of state and the Honorable Raila Odinga have actually, agreed to come together and said, let's bury the hatchet, let's work. And if you listen to Miguna's tweets and his statements when he was in the US, when he was in the UK, addressing, diaspora people, he was clear that he does not like what Raila Odinga has done, and he does not like what Uhuru Kenyatta has done. So anybody who wants peace at the moment, because what Raila did, and clearly he did not join Jubilee. In fact, it's very clear he has not joined Jubilee. But he shook hands with Uhuru Kenyatta so that, there can be a soft ground for citizens to work. Now, Miguna feels that that handshake is a betrayal, and of course there are people, foot soldiers in Raila camp and foot soldiers in Jubilee camp, who feel that actually that handshake was betraying them. Many of us don't feel like that. We feel that it was just putting down any, guns and saying we are willing to work together.
Okay, but Ishmael, you can certainly understand how Miguna is feeling. His deportation was directly as a result of the swearing in, which the oath he administered himself for
Yvonne,
Raila Odinga.
Political climate in 2017 was not limited to Miguna, and it was not limited to Raila Odinga. Neither was it limited only to Uhuru Kenyatta.
Great.
Everybody was a player.
Yeah. So do you think then that Miguna can carry on with the resistance movement, with the quest for electoral justice in the country? Remember, Dr. David D called off the People's Assembly following, that handshake. So, what happens now? Does Miguna have the charisma? Does he have the following, political following, to be able to carry on with this quest by himself without NASA, which is itself trying to figure out its own way?
Yvonne, yes, I believe Miguna believes in himself an intelligent person, and all intelligent people change their mind. I mean, you cannot just be fixated to your theory or to your way of seeing things. So Raila Odinga has changed tact. His main lieutenants have changed tact, and we don't believe that Miguna will stick to simply saying that we will have to call people to throw stones and make sure we, uproot somebody from State House. So he has to change his tact as well.
Okay.
And he has to work with Raila Odinga. He has to work with the opposition to find how can we look. NRM has been outlawed. How do we now approach the people and use the same outfit to achieve our changes? So Miguna must change his approach as well.
Well, you say he must and he should, but this was a tweet that he posted on the 17th of March. He said, in true Miguna fashion, contrary to myths being propagated by the contaminated Kenyan media, the NRM-KE isn't isolated by the handshake. The NRM movement is not involved. We're not going to solve intractable societal ills through handshakes. We're going to do so through structural changes in governance. So you're saying that, he has to. But this is Miguna. So, I mean, the question is, can he?
Actually, we did not give Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta a chance. They simply shook their hands. And there is a document being prepared. Probably it would capture the sentiments of NRM. But NRM General, Miguna, is already refusing even to recognize the handshake and to recognize any document. So it will be quite his own problem to handle. The issue here is people are willing to go back to work. Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta have shook hands. So I think the remaining thing is logistical, navigational issues, which will be ironed out through the teams that have been set up to make sure the peace and handshake works.
Okay, so here's my final question to you, Ishmael, and I will pose the same to George in a minute. And this is with respect to, the possibility of going back to court in case this matter is not resolved this evening. There is a possibility that tomorrow morning it'll go back to court. Do we really expect anything from the courts? The High Court, and the Court of Appeal ruled that his deportation was illegal. They made their findings known, their orders are known, even as George has so eloquently explained. But so again, we go back to court tomorrow. Can the courts really hold the Inspector General, the Director of Immigration, the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, in contempt? To what extent have we seen, even from past precedents, that they can actually compel the government to comply with their orders? This is something that we have not seen successfully in the country. Ishmael, so the courts might say again tomorrow they're in contempt, they've not obeyed, they've not complied. So what?
Thank you, Yvonne, for asking. That's what I was trying to explain earlier. In order for the citizens to trust in our courts, the judges must arise to the occasion and punish government officials who actually disregard the judges or obey the court orders. It is very clear, and it's common knowledge that has been there all through in the print media and everywhere, that the government officials, the police and the immigration, have been asked severally to cooperate with the court in how they are handling Miguna's case. So if really Miguna does not enter the country tonight, in my humble view, then judges must arise to the occasion and put somebody behind the cells. And we want to see it on media that so-and-so actually was put in cell, so that people can fear the law, can respect the law, and can regard the judges in their proper stature. That's my view.
George, how can the government officials be made to obey and comply with the court orders? As Ishmael says, they must be made to feel the law. Any chance of that happening, George?
Well, do they have an option really, unless they're telling us they don't believe in constitutionalism, they don't believe in the principles of sovereignty set out in our constitution? I think the government here is duty-bound to really respect the laws of the land, and once the courts have given them orders, really they have no option but to obey those orders. It's actually also a little bit absurd that Miguna is in this situation following the swearing-in ceremony that took place at Uhuru Park. And as Ishmael has said, it wasn't only Miguna who was there. We saw Senior Counsel Orengo, we saw other people like Kajwang, and all the other lawyers who were there. Now, to really narrow this and make it a Miguna affair, and even the charges that were leveled against him when he appeared before the Honorable Mulochi in Kajiado are very serious charges, but they were all because Miguna was actually the overall person, as he said, the general that swore in Raila. But now Raila and President Uhuru Kenyatta have said, let bygones be bygones. Why would we be still pinning Miguna down on the same, on these charges when the two protagonists have come together, they have shook hands? It just turns out to be a little bit mean-spirited, even punitive. It serves no purpose really but to just punish Miguna and to teach him a lesson. And that is not how we should be governing our country. Our country should be governed by the rule of law, not the might of men. And no matter how aggrieved some of these top government officials are, they are duty-bound to really follow the law. And we really hope they're not the ones who are going to be in the forefront of telling Kenyans that breaking the law doesn't come at any cost, because then we'll be treading down a very dangerous path as a country. We don't want to go down that path.
Okay, indeed, we would not want to do that. Ishmael, are you disappointed with the absence, as I'm seeing some of the feedback here, of perhaps Raila Odinga? You know, George said that he expected, even as a courtesy, to have Gordon Kihalangwa there. But what of Raila Odinga? Do you think his silence on this issue since 2:30 this afternoon says anything? Should he be there?
Well, yes, if you talk about him being the leader of NASA, I think he should make a comment about the return of Miguna. But expecting that Raila Odinga should be there at the airport to invite Miguna is far-fetched, because you can see Honorable Senior Counsel James Orengo is at the airport. Definitely you understand what that means politically. Besides him being a lawyer, it means Raila Odinga does not dislike the fact that Miguna is coming back and he should be received. And there are several NASA lawyers you can see at the airport. So I do not really think that we should have expected Raila Odinga to lead the whole entourage, to bring in Miguna. For me, it's not a big disappointment, but Honorable Raila Odinga must make a statement about Miguna's return. And he should not limit himself or reduce himself to making any arguments about how Miguna has, already, made some disparaging remarks about Raila and Uhuru, handshake. Those are normal, reactions from people like Miguna. But Honorable Raila Odinga should at least support his coming back and maybe make a statement that he supports him.
Raila Odinga aside, the other principles of NASA, if it still holds at this moment, because now it seems like everybody's going their separate ways. So where does that leave, Miguna now? NASA seemingly on its deathbed with certain principles promising slow, sweet revenge on others. But then, so what does he do? Where does he fit in the cog of that, in the new opposition that we have? Ishmael.
Is that for me, Yvonne? Okay,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
You see, as I said, Miguna has crafted his own political environment, and for now it is hostile. Let's say he does not have Kalonzo Musyoka by virtue of what has happened between Raila and the president, and he doesn't have Mudavadi, and he doesn't have Wetangula, because Wetangula and Mudavadi are likely to see him generally as an outsider from Raila backyard, and Kalonzo Musyoka naturally will not want to go along with him because he's quite abrasive. So I believe...
But isn't it good for them, though, Ishmael? Because they're now saying they're going to carry on with the quest for electoral justice, and they're saying that Raila has betrayed the cause by shaking hands with President Uhuru Kenyatta. Is it now interesting that they're, on the same side for the first time?
To be honest, I don't see Miguna fitting into the basket belonging to Mudavadi, Wetangula, and Kalonzo. I think, quote unquote, he's too huge, and he will actually sooner or later differ with every one of them within a week or two.
Okay.
So I don't see him really working with these three.
All right. Ishmael Nyaribo, a legal analyst, thank you very much for speaking with us. George Morara, who's the Vice Chair of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Let me just get into your feedback, because I think I have about 2 minutes to go. Owar Levis says... let the games begin, the return of a general. Jefferson says the immigration is giving Miguna free PR. If only they could allow him to enter freely, nothing would have escalated. To me, this is a non-issue. Danson Kuruna says Miguna coming back to Kenya is non-consequential. It's only hot air. He wields no political power without Raila Odinga. Chris Ogongo says leave politics to politicians. Find things to do. Alan Makodhiambo says, are these the signs of the handshake to continue impunity? Was Miguna not born in Kano Plains in Kisumu County? So is he not a Kenyan by birth? Why take too long to allow Miguna back into the country? Let him be in his country of birth. There's one I'm looking for, and this is by Justin Akama, who says, why is Miguna still being held at the JKIA? Unless this question is answered, there is no need for this debate. Yes, he's back to Kenya, but he is not free as yet. Which society are we living in? Enough of the despots. A Kenyan by birth being forced to apply citizenship as a tourist. Those are your views, and more of them continue. The hashtag is the big story. Indeed, this is a conversation and a developing story that we will stay on. Sophia Wanuna is still at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and will continue to bring you updates. This looks like it could go well.